Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to install the Puppy Linux operating system onto a computer of your choice. I chose Puppy Linux because this is arguably one of the smallest Linux distros or distributions, and for that purpose it only is like a couple megabytes, so you can easily put this on any computer or basically any sized flash drive. Alright, so first you're going to want to open up Google Chrome or any such web browser. And first you'll need Rufus. So first you're going to want to Google Rufus and go to this first link here. Now what Rufus does is it creates a bootable USB with ISO images or other files and such like that. So at the website you're going to want to scroll down and to the download headline here, go on the first one, which would be the version 2.11, and you're going to want to download that. And I downloaded that to my desktop here I've already got. So I'm going to cancel out of that, but you're going to want to go ahead and do that and download it there. And then next what you're going to want is Puppy Linux, the actual operating system .iso file. So you're going to want to Google Puppy Linux, and then also go to the first link here, or just puppylinux.org. And here on the main page, you're going to want to go to this headline, how to download Puppy Linux, and then scroll down here to this line, and you're going to want to click on Puppy 4.3.1 version. And here it brings you to this page where it's got the list of all the files you could download. They're optional, like text files and extra plugins and service packs, but you're only going to want the .iso really. So right here where it's just got pup431 ISO, you're just going to want to click that. And you'll also want to download that to your desktop. But I've already got that as well. So once you have that all downloaded, you're going to want to, just for nice cleanliness and organization, just want to make a new folder and call that Linux, and just dump them in there just to keep things a little bit organized. But you've got your two files right here, and then now you're going to want to make your USB bootable drive out of this. So you'll want to take your USB stick and plug it into your computer. Oh, and make sure that it's empty though. So I've got this filled up here with it's already pre-made, but if you do have a USB stick or something that does have space in it, you're going to want to remove that all. And the proper way to do that would be to right-click the drive and then click on Format, and then just leave everything as the default, and then hit Start. And OK. And this will of course wipe everything off that USB, so make sure that it's nothing important, or if there's nothing on it, then you're good to go anyway. Alright, so it's all empty. Now you're going to want to go back and open up the Rufus.exe, and then you're brought up with this menu here. You start off with choosing the device. If you have multiple USB plugged in, you want to make sure you're picking the right one, because this does wipe off anything that would be on the USB if you didn't already. So make sure you know what correct drive you're pointing towards. And then you're going to want to leave the partition, its default file system as the default, cluster default, and the new volume label. You could rename now, but once we finish it's going to change the name back, so we'll do that last if you want. Everything here needs to stay the same except for this here. You'll want to change the image from FreeDOS to ISO, and then click on this button to browse and pick your image. This is where you would select your Puppy Linux.iso. So I'll navigate to that folder and select it from here. And everything's all ready, and you just gotta hit start. And depending on how large an ISO file you put on the flash drive, determines how long it would take to complete it. But thankfully it's a really small ISO, so it's already done. And to just double check for safety reasons, you can just see your F drive here and make sure everything there's files in there. So there you go. Now you have a USB that is bootable from the booting up your computer. So in the next part, I will show you how to put that into your other computer and boot it up to Puppy Linux. Okay, this is the second part of installing Puppy Linux onto a computer. And right now I've got a separate computer here to install the operating system on. It's pretty minimal. It's just got hard drive and everything else just to get it working. So first off, you'll need your USB stick, which will have the Puppy Linux ISO installed on from the first part of the video, and you'll want to just put that into your computer. And yeah, you've got your keyboard plugged in here, and then your video output, just the bare minimum requirements. And then once you've got that in, you'll want to turn on the machine, and while it's booting up, you will want to repeatedly press F10, because at some point the splash screen will pop up, and if you're repeatedly pressing F10, it's one of the options to bring up the boot order. Or you could normally just let it go and it'll boot normally if there was an operating system already installed. And in some computers it's not F10, sometimes it's F2 or delete or any of the F function keys up here. The key is to boot up the computer or check your manual, and then look usually in the bottom here or in the corner, and it'll usually say like F2 system BIOS, or like F10 to set up boot order and stuff like that. So for this case I'll be using F10 to get here. So then now you've got your boot order where it shows the hard drives or USBs plugged in. This the white text up here, that is this hard drive that it sees, and that has nothing on it, so we don't want to start the boot off from there. So your main controls for the keyboard would be your arrow keys and enter. So we'll go down 1 to the USB 3.0, which would be the Puppy Linux, and then hit enter on it. And this is going to restart the computer instead with the boot order of the Puppy Linux. You see it already had a splash screen of Puppy Linux, so it's going to boot up now and load some drivers and extra stuff from that USB to start loading it on. Alright, once that's done, you will now select what type of keyboard layout you have. This, in most cases, if you're in the US, you'd have the standard QWERTY keyboard, but if you were in like Germany or something, you'd have a different layout because you have a different language. So choose the appropriate language keyboard that you have. For us it would be US, so hover over that and hit enter. And now you select your country location. This is for fonts and stuff, also more language things. So your appropriate language and country, select that and hit enter. Now your time zone in the US, mine would be US Central, so I would scroll over with the arrow keys down to there and hit enter. And this screen, you can choose between two graphical graphical overlays. One is more low end with less resources being used for the user interface, and we will be using Xorg because it's the default selection and it's the more sophisticated version of the graphics, so we will be selecting that one. Okay, and now you're at the resolution selection screen. This determines how your video is displayed with your monitor, and as a default I'll be going with that one, but you can also choose bigger or smaller numbers according to what type of monitor or resolution you want. And before you do that, just make sure you go over to test in the middle and hit enter to open up the test screen. Now you can test it now, or if you have an older computer, you can change the mouse. If it isn't a USB mouse or a PS/2 mouse, which I use a USB Bluetooth one right here, and if you had a older mouse, it might use one of these ports. But if you had a mouse that didn't use any of those two, you would want to go and change your mouse settings here. But because we don't have that, and most computers nowadays don't have anything more than a USB, we will just test now. And okay, so this screen pops up, which shows the results of the settings that you chose with other settings and stuff underneath. And now you can use the mouse control to move around and just see that things like that work. And then you can click OK or hit enter to confirm that the settings worked. And here's another summary about the settings, and if it worked out okay, you would hit finish, or you would go back to tweak, and this you could change other things like the refresh rate or resolution, or even change the type of settings deep in the graphic files. But we'll just do finish because that turned out okay for us. And here's just one of the last screens letting us know if we want to change back to Xversa, the second option in the graphics settings, or just continue on. But we're all good, so we're gonna hit done and just about finish up installing Puppy Linux. And there it is. It seems to be working okay, and you can add extra features and stuff like that. So have fun with your new Puppy Linux operating system. But one last thing very important to tell is when you shut off your operating system over here, you are given an option to save it as a state onto a USB drive. And you're going to want to do that, because if you don't save it, it's just going to go back to the beginning every time you boot up the computer. It'll save this file onto your flash drive, and that way you'll have sort of a portable operating system also at the same time. Yep, you just gotta have your USB plugged in that you've had used for putting on the operating system, and you hit OK. And you can also change what type of partitioned drive you have on the USB, but it's just the one, which is fine. So you'll hit OK through that. And then you can name the file differently, but I'll just leave it as is, as pupsave2. And this would be any encryption settings that you might want for security purposes. You can go light or heavy encryption, but I'll just stick with the normal, no encryption necessary.
And here you can designate the file size for saving it on. You can give it more room or not enough, but I'll just go with the default of 512 megabytes and hit enter. And here's the just a summary of all your settings that you have applied. What type of partition, the size, path of where it saves. You can change the folder in your USB. You could just cancel out of it completely, or you can save it to the flash drive. And I will hit enter on this one. And here it's cut off, but it's now starting to save the files necessary onto the flash drive. Okay, it's all done with that, and now it's gonna save it, and it will now shut off. And then that is it. That is how you install Puppy Linux through a bootable USB drive on a second computer, and how to properly install it. Thanks for watching.